My name is Tim Howard, and I am the CIO of Vish. So I work on innovation with Vish. I also work with customers on a daily basis, so that they're able to get the most value out of Vish. And we can come up. The history of Vish kind of comes from my background in the industry. Over 25 years as a hairdresser, but also as a salon owner. I worked with a major beauty brand for many years, traveling the US and Canada, actually traveling all over the world. And that's how sort of Vish came to be. Understanding what salon problems they had, and I wanted to solve it specifically around hair color. And originally Vish was about waste, but as time has gone on and we've grown and we've changed and we've new iterations of the product, there's so much more about Vish that adds value to salons. And one of the things that we do is just make life easier for hairdressers, which is a very important topic that we're going to cover today, which is stress in the workplace and how the problems that hairdressers are having, and how salon owners and hairdressers are problem areas around stress and mental health in the salon. So with that, I'd like to introduce everybody, or take a minute to introduce yourselves. So whoever wants to start, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having us here today to be with you. We're super grateful. I'm Jen, co-founder of CanvasMe. I'm with Matt, who is my husband, but also co-founder of CanvasMe. We not our first rodeo working together as a husband and wife team. We've previously spent 20 years combined working on the business side of beauty, leveraging technology to empower beauty businesses to grow. And through our time working on the business side of beauty, we've learned a lot of the pain points, similar to you, Tim, on what these beauty business owners were going through, and particularly with recruitment, right? And so we saw a lot of people call us and they were like, these strategies are great. We're growing our business, we're booming, we need to hire. How do I find more people? And that became the biggest question that we got over the last 10 years, and even more so now. And so what we realized is not only was recruitment a huge issue in the beauty industry, because it was, we struggled finding each other, but really as a beauty professional, as a beauty student, how do you humanize, how do you professionalize yourself through a Word doc resume? And so what we started to recognize is that we need to empower our beauty professionals and beauty students through digital portfolios where they can upload videos, they can upload imagery, where they can really humanize themselves. Because at the end of the day, business owners are hiring people, right? They're not, yes, you need talent, but they're hiring the people. And similarly, beauty business owners can humanize their brand, their culture, their education, what it's like to work for them, and we can find our match. And so we ended up leaving that previous company to throw everything into CanvasMe. And today we are working with thousands of beauty professionals and businesses across the US and growing every day. So it's been really, really exciting.
I love when you say, she says anything and then she's like, do you want anything to add? No, you did a great job.
You just covered everything. Yes. So Matt, what about you specifically though? What's your background? What did you do before CanvasMe? What was your introduction to the industry?
Yeah, so the company Jen mentioned actually was Millennium Software. So it's one of the largest POS companies in the beauty industry. She was the head of marketing and education for about 15 years. I was the head of PR and advertising at Millennium for about 9. So we got to work really closely together and really help small businesses, especially in the beauty industry, grow. And again, we heard so many problems around recruiting and understanding, again, the cyclical problems about not hiring the right cultural fit. Instead, these salons are hiring out of desperation. So CanvasMe was built to solve that problem.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. I originally got to meet Jen and Matt. Well, I met Jen first. I was speaking at a spa conference many years ago, and Jen was in a transformational place in her life where she was clinging on to my every word because I was talking about human behavior and human potential. And she knew that was what was missing in not just her life that she wanted more of, but knew it was missing in the industry. So I started working one-on-one with Jen, and I would like to think partly inspired her courage to join up with Matt and say, let's do this and take this leap of faith. And thank goodness they did. And in this whole recruitment and retention part of the process, they realized that you can recruit as much as you want. And like Matt just said, could be a bad cultural fit, but ultimately, culture itself has to be created and clarified and really conveyed to all of the people that you're attracting, trying to retain, and training them properly to fit into that culture. So often, a lot of times, business owners in all industries just think everyone should know how to fit in. And human behavior is the big missing link in all of the attracting and retaining and then teaching people how to thrive in a culture. So as they were growing and seeing this repetitive problem, they brought me in as the chief impact officer for CanvasMe to bring all of this human behavior knowledge to the entire industry to up level everyone as much as possible. Previously, I've been a motivational speaker, author, and serial entrepreneur for over 25 years, and teaching human behavior in all different industries. And that's the part I love the most, is seeing how people can go from where they are to wherever they want to go when you just give them a little direction, help them see what's possible of their own potential, and guide them so that they can keep up leveling. And then not only do they personally up level, but every culture up levels. It's all the tides rise together, right? So when you empower the people, the entire culture lifts itself up and has unlimited potential.
Yep.
Wow, that's great. I mean, great intro from all of you. I want to know a little bit more. So with CanvasMe, and what does mental health and awareness mean to CanvasMe? So how does that fit into what you're currently doing and how you're helping salons?
Yeah, I mean, Jen can probably answer this better than me, but what we decided to do is create a platform, a tool, right, to find people. However, there's a lot of people in this industry that claim to be, recruitment specialists. Oh, we're recruitment specialists. We know how to recruit talent. Well, really, at the end of the day, it's about how we can tap into human potential and how we can become human potential and human behavior experts, so that when you do hire somebody, right, when you're adding to your culture, when you're evaluating your existing culture, right, you're optimizing that team performance, you're optimizing that culture. Not only are you building better teams, happy, high performing professionals, but you're also building people that are forever indebted to you and your brand for bringing that kind of educational value into their lives. Because not only do they show up as the best version of themselves at work, but they're the best mom, the best sister, the best brother, the best every human they can possibly be, and they're maximizing their entire lives. And that's really where Jen comes into play, because yes, there's a tool, there's a platform to unite everybody, but once we have that, how do we then maximize their potential? And Jen comes in with these impact trainings and really allows everybody to show up as their best version selves and reach their highest potential.
Right. So Tim, my perception on mental health, working in the human behavior industry, and the terminology and the symbolism that the media and the world has put on it isn't actually accurate. Most mental health issues are emotional dis-ease issues. There are a very small percentage actually, that are biological or actual biochemistry of mental health, but the majority of the people can solve what's perceived as mental health issues by emotional stability, by emotional processing skills, by emotional intelligence. So what Jen was saying, and why mental health and this topic of empowering with impact skill training comes together, is if you teach people how to become more emotionally intelligent, you teach them how to process their emotions. Therefore, they have greater mental health, happiness, and overall well-being. And as I said in the introduction, this has been the missing key for this industry as well as all industries, where a lot of leaders want to create this, or hopefully creating a culture, but not thinking about how do the humans thrive in this culture, and how do I create support systems in order to allow this growth to happen, ongoing trainings and support systems. So if you want to improve the world through mental health, or the world's mental health, it really begins by teaching people how to process their emotions and have emotional control, emotional stability. Therefore, they have mental control as well. So our thoughts create our reality. So if I'm thinking negative thoughts constantly, but I don't know how to control my mind to think different high quality thoughts, I'm going to have emotional dis-ease. Therefore, it feels like I have mental health issues. But the more positive and productive way to look at it, in my opinion, is we just need to empower more people how to understand the power of controlling their minds, therefore controlling their emotional states. And therefore you improve drastically what's termed as the mental health of society. And before it was a big issue, but now post pandemic, it's an even bigger issue after people were isolated and living in fear.
Absolutely. That was going to be my next question for you. Have you noticed a change in, let's say, the beauty students even that come out of school and how prepared they are to be in a busy environment where they may have been in beauty school for 10 months or whatever, but a lot of that learning was done remotely? What sort of uptick have you seen in a need for your services, like especially around mental health and awareness in the salons post-COVID?
Jen, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So what we're seeing is, yes, a lot of this feeling of not worthiness or not readiness, right? And so through pandemic, they were not on the floor as much. They didn't have as much client time, as much hands-on experience. And so, yeah, we're seeing a lot of this worthiness. Also, you know, you're talking to these Gen Z generations where their entire lives have lived, you know, through these digital social platforms where they're scrutinized and they're under a microscope. And so, you know, even furthering this worthiness issue. And so we see a lot of these students, you know, feeling like, and just, you know, what Jen mentioned before, what you believe, right? Your thoughts become your results, is because they believe they're not good enough, and therefore their actions are they don't apply. Right. And therefore their results are they don't get the job. And so this trickles down throughout their career. And so what we're empowering them with is a tool that makes them feel really professional, but then the education to go along with it to help them understand and process. You may have this belief, but you know, these are the tools that you can leverage to change that belief, to then change your behavior and then ultimately change your result. And so anytime we host a class, I mean, I can't tell you how many of these students reach out to us afterwards and tell us that they're going to literally change the world because we've literally changed their perspective in an hour of our time with them. We held actually, Jen, Matt and I held a class through COVID of 4 weeks of mindset training to these students. We had thousands of students take this course. And by the end of that week, they just want, you know, can I get certified in emotional intelligence? Can I have more of this? Because it completely transformed their thoughts into creating new actions that then gave them new results.
Yeah, and then what we're seeing, which is really exciting about this generation too, and Jen mentioned it earlier about having these really amazing impact trainings in salons. We're seeing this is a form of recruitment. This generation, they're very engaged when it comes to mindset and emotional intelligence. So part of your recruitment strategy should be implementing these impact trainings quarterly or however often in your salon you feel is best to attract these younger generations, because they want to not only grow from a technical perspective, but they want to grow personally as
people.
Yeah, I have 18-year-old twin daughters who are about to go to college, and they're part of that generation. And just witnessing them and their friends, that what they prioritized is so different. So what used to work in recruitment, what used to work in operationally within business, no longer works for the millennial and Gen Z generation the way that it did before. So the mindset culturally all has to change. What they value is feeling fulfilled, having growth, having opportunities of clarity of their path and their passion and what their future could look like. And just simply asking the questions and onboarding, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, really can impact what they're doing when they step into the salon. Instead of going from transactional, showing up, having a sense of purpose and path really helps them work in a more purposeful, intentional way. But, you know, to really speak to this generation, there needs to be opportunities to pour into their personal development on an ongoing strategy, especially because the younger Gen Zs, like my daughters who were in high school, a really major time of social emotional development, were missed 2 years of that social interaction that is very much prominent part of development. So they're going to be looking for it even more, because what damage was caused in isolation is even greater. And many people, you asked him, one of the things or some of the things that we saw happened, many people lost their social skills.
Yep.
And in an industry that's so much about socialization, you have to pour into to people to get them to learn to bring their confidence back up again, to be able to communicate effectively, or it's going to be a hard way to thrive in an industry that needs a high touch of interaction.
That's great. Can you give some tips for salon owners who want to start these conversations? What is a good way to start a mental health conversation with your team? What are some of the things that they could do as initial steps? And part two of that question is, when you talk, I want you to talk a little bit more about what your seminars look like, what your classes look like. Is there a separate piece that you do in preparation with the salon owners and the managers to get them ready for what their team is about to embark on?
Yes. Jen, Matt, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Jen. This is all you.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, yes, context is really important. An evaluation to understand where people are is necessary to understand where they want to go. So having that kind of context and questionnaire and surveying. So we are really prioritizing cultural assessments. So the cultural assessment is about the whole culture, but then also the individuals in the culture, to have a questionnaire for them of where they are, so that when we're doing these impact trainings, there are core tenets, but they're also customized to each individual culture. So each culture gets the most out of it. So your first part of your question was to ask, how do you begin these conversations? Mm-hmm. Tim, a lot of people just don't even know what they don't know. They don't know how to ask for what they need because they don't even know they need it, or what the solution would be. So what I recommend to business owners, the salon owners, is to just bring in a training and say, we want to help you develop personally and find what your needs are. So in this questionnaires, they're very simple, but I can find out about somebody and who they are within seconds of reviewing this questionnaire, because I've studied human behavior for so long. And quickly you'll understand that so many people want to be better. They just don't know how to ask for it or what they need for themselves to be better, because no one ever had those conversations in their lives before that. And, we used to rely on people's parents and their families teaching these kind of things. And we have a very different dynamic of what the core tenets of family are anymore. So we can't assume people just know how to be better people. We can't just assume people know how to invest in their personal growth and development. We can't assume that they're learning it at any stage of their lives. So it's about, when you open the conversation, first you could just say, we're offering this because I believe it's going to help you up level. But if you want to have a dialogue, how many people feel stressed right now? How many people would like to feel less stressed right now? How many people would like to feel more in control of their lives right now? How many people would like to feel less affected by other people's stuff? Could you imagine if you weren't offended by other people because you learned how to control your perspective and realize that other people's stuff has nothing to do with you? And asking those kind of questions of what motivates you? What do you want more of? Every one of those questions that I just asked should be ongoing questions in every single culture.
That's great. That's great. And I mean, specifically, so we talk about, with Vish, right? One of the things that Vish does really well is that we take some of the conversation away from the hairdresser so they don't have to. Because, I've always said this, that if the chef served the food and then also took the cash at the end and cooked the food, we'd get the same problem in the restaurant industry with things being heavily discounted or given away, because you have such a relationship with that person, and that you get that you need that validation from that person because you're doing the hair all the time. And I know just my own experience being in the industry doing hair, the first few years are really tough because your skill is not there, and you have to have these hard conversations with them. And, I've always said to my team, like, who come out of school, be prepared to cry, be prepared that these people who are in your chair are going to be mean to you. So you got to learn how to control the conversation, but then also have a bit of a thick skin. which is easy to say for my personality because I can deal with that, but not so easy for everybody else. So I think this is so valuable that we teach our young hairdressers or people who've been in the industry for a long time how to handle these emotions and these conversations.
Yeah, and turn them around, right?
Yeah.
It's not just being able to handle it, but to be really skilled at turning a negative conversation around instead of being triggered and reacting to something, learning how to be more responsive and remain emotional stability so that you can actually take an awkward or uncomfortable or high conflict conversation and finesse it in a way that turns the entire ship into a different direction without causing damage to the relationship.
Absolutely. And one time I was working at a beauty school at one point. I was just in there doing some assessments and some helping out years ago. And one of the smartest things that I learned from that is that they were having a problem with the school in particular about how the students were coming dressed to work. And they were not dressed appropriately whatsoever. They looked like they were going to a nightclub when they were coming into work. And I was part of a staff meeting that they were kind of dealing with this problem. And one person piped up and said, we can't assume that they know any different. That our job is to teach them not just how to cut hair, but teach them how to be a professional and how to deal with all these things. Because maybe their mom and their sisters dressed like that, and they just don't know any better. So to run a healthy organization and to have a successful business, this is part of it. We've got young people who are coming out from the 18, 17, 18, 19 years old who are entering the workforce sometimes for the first time. And a lot of these things, it is our responsibility to teach them. So could I just ask you, so what are some salons doing now to promote a positive and healthy work environment, not only for new hires, but for current employees now? Now, obviously it relates to that, but how do you build on what they're doing? Or again, my audio went a bit funny. What tips can you give salon owners to do this and to kind of weed out some of the negativity that's in there? Because we also know that this industry can be full of gossiping and full of negative backroom conversations. So can you talk about that for a little bit and how we can give salons some coaching and some tips to help with that?
So Tim, it's really about beginning with creating growth mindset cultures. If you can create a culture that's based on a growth mindset, it means that you're not thinking like a boss anymore, but you're thinking like a leader, a mentor, a coach. And Jen, Matt, and I always say, lead more, manage less. And so if you start from the top down and the bottom up, eventually the culture will become a living, breathing entity on its own if you're empowering the people, again, top down and bottom up. A lot of times there's a belief by owners that we're just going to invest in the people that are already at the top. But if you actually invest in the people that are just beginning to and empower their human potential and their ability to see themselves at a greater version of themselves, they might accelerate past the people that are already there really quickly just from that knowledge. So what really has to begin is having these growth mindset cultures is the understanding that it's not just about technical skills. It never really was, but it for sure isn't anymore. And it's about developing the people in the culture and giving them the trainings and tools, just like you would around the trade, just like you would around color and cutting. There needs to equally, if not even more, be this curriculum that's part of the culture that allows people to continuously grow and thrive personally. And then it also plays out into their personal lives outside of the environment. And to think that people don't bring their stuff into work is crazy, right? We're all humans. We're not robots. Yeah. Like you said, there's drama, there's gossiping, all this stuff. But if you empower people to be self-actualized, even a little bit, then in these growth mindset cultures, it becomes a drama-free zone, and drama is kept out of that space. It's a complaint-free zone. It's a solution-driven environment. And so everybody's behavior becomes accountable to each other in a positive and productive way that, like I said, then it becomes living and breathing on its own. And the leaders actually do begin to lead more, coach more, mentor more, and manage personalities a lot less. I think Jen and Matt want to chime in a little bit too on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think always right on, Jen, but really they're starting with these cultural assessments, right? Because, yes, we're a recruitment platform. Yes, everybody is hiring, but let's assess your current culture climate and what that looks like. So we're not recruiting into a leaky bucket, right? And how can we stabilize that? How can we do that? Well, we're doing that through these impact trainings, right? Through these coaching. I love that Jen used the word curriculum, because we are now not only providing curriculum for the salon digitally and in person, but we're also providing curriculum for these students that are on the verge of graduating. So we're empowering them with these tools to have that mindset, to have the courage to step into their greatness, to really understand, how to have those conversations, how to really manage their emotions, how to know that, if somebody walks by you and doesn't say hi, that doesn't mean they hate you, right? That's on them. They've had a rough morning. How can we have compassion and empathy and turn it around and make, pour more into that person because we know they're having a bad day, not just react, as Jen was talking about. So we're going into curriculum with schools. So a lot of the salons that we're working with really start with that culture assessment, and then they graduate, because what we're seeing is, Jen's right, these Gen Zers and millennials, they want to be coached. They want to join a culture that feels like family, right? And I love Simon, because he talks about this all the time, and he analyzes a lot of cultures in the military and in the army. And he says, how are you willing to go out and risk your life? And you just met this person. Well, because I know that they would do it for me, right? And if we create these cultures of, I know they would do it for me, and we all have each other's back, and we really understand who we are as humans and reach our highest potential, well then, there's a lot of problems we can solve there.
Yeah, we poll our members and our students on what they're looking for most in their new opportunities and their new jobs. One of those top 3 things is family atmosphere,
family culture.
And how do you do that, right? How do you build that family culture? It starts with emotional
pouring into them
and mindset.
As humans.
Yep.
Another big one that they also look for is good energy. That is literally a thing you'll see that this Gen Z generation writing on their resumes, on their job applications, is they want good energy. So that's a priority. How do you create a culture where people walk in and they're like, feel good to be here instead of anxious to be here? And one more part of that, Tim, is what we're finding is a lot of owners have never actually even clarified what their culture was. They never even thought about it before. And it's really, it stumps them at first when you give a cultural assessment, because they often might have been a really good stylist, built a book, added another stylist, and it just kind of snowballed into a bigger place. And then all of a sudden they're going back to the fundamental foundational things that should have happened in the beginning, because they have to now. So really assessing what is your culture and what value do you offer and provide? What does the energy feel like? What does the environment feel like? What do you want your customers to feel like? What do you want your employees to feel like? These are all really important questions, because this is a generation of feelings, and they want to feel a good way about life. And if they're not feeling a good way about life, they're leaving to the next opportunity because they know it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this conversation is great because it's spurring up so many other questions with me. So we're talking about the managers and the owners getting on board and implementing these changes and having a cultural assessment of their business. What about in a situation, do you have any tips? Maybe there's some hairdressers out there, and I know I've had this experience myself working in some salons. I love the salon. I love, everything about where I work, but the management culture is what's needs work and needs change and has problems. How would you go about, maybe somebody on this call today is a hairdresser who is watching this and wants to impact change in their salon? Do you have any tips for them on how they bring this awareness to the salon owners or the salon managers?
They suggest that that's what's a priority to them. They might want to talk to some of their peers and say, we would like to work on our personal development growth as well in this business, and we feel that we'll all benefit from it. The whole the mindset of management, why I said lead more, manage less. To me, the analogy of management is babysitting personalities. And that's how many people see management, because there's many managers in place that have had no human behavior training whatsoever. And when you're managing people, you're managing human behavior. You're guiding human behavior. So more people are micromanaging people's personalities instead of magnifying the potential in them to lead them. It's a very different mindset. So if a stylist is listening right now and says, I want this for myself, understand the value and go with the value proposition to the owner. The value is this: the more that I grow, the more my business grows, the more the salon grows. You times that by 5 stylists, you times that by 10 stylists. Like I said in the beginning, when the tide rises, all the boats rise together. And so knowing that and saying, we believe that this is a priority in investment and the ROI will be exponential, because as each person gets better, the entire culture gets better.
That's great. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just, like I said, I can think of 1,000 more questions I want to ask you. So when we talk about Gen Z, Gen Y, the millennials, I've been to so many different meetings, and every new generation that comes up, we as people who've been in the industry for a long time really assess them and say they don't want to work hard, or they're, just label them really. But in terms of work-life balance, right? I think this generation has the potential. They kind of have it figured out a little bit more, right? They're not necessarily want to grind like my generation did at the salon. They want to enjoy their life a little bit more. But in terms of work-life balance to minimize burnout, and especially like throughout COVID, how do you see burnout occurring in the salon space, and what can salon owners and stylists do to avoid that burnout?
Matt, do you want to take it or you want me to?
This was your whole speech last week, so I'm going to let you take it.
Yeah. So I did do a speech on this last week for a lot of the salon owners. So burnout is often not just physiological, but it's more psychological and emotional. And so kind of goes right back to what we were talking about. When you empower people to understand how to control their thoughts and emotions, life gets a lot easier and a lot less stressful. And therefore, your energy management is more in control. You're more empowered and inspired by life than you are depleted by life. But if you think about, if you feel that everything's out of your control, you're being told what to do, you don't like your clients, you have no control of your perspective, you're going to feel bombarded by life. You're going to feel completely drained by life. But if you wake up every day and you feel purposeful and intentional, and you're excited about life, and you have the power of your mind to turn situations around as they happen, taking them from negative to positive, taking situations from negative to positive, now you are inspired by life. Versus, and whatever's happening to you in life is happening for you versus against you. But another part that we do in the impact trainings is the physiological training as well. So teaching people how their daily habits can either hurt them or help them, give them more energy or take their energy away. And I know a lot of people, I lose some friends when I say this, but just something as simple as if you're eating sugar in the middle of a workday, your energy is going to plummet. You will never be on your game mentally, emotionally, or physically, because you've now just sabotaged yourself. And a lot of people they don't even know that. So how do they choose differently? So the impact training isn't just about the mindset and the emotional component, but how do you optimize your physiological state to then optimize your mental and emotional state too? Because a lot of stuff outside of us is out of our control. We can control the daily habits that we choose to hurt us or help us, to give us energy or take our energy away. And Tim, that's really what it comes down to, is your choices are hurting you or helping you. They're giving you energy or taking your energy away. What do you value? Do you value energy, feeling good, feeling positive, feeling happy? Then change your daily habits, what you're eating, how you're drinking. Are you staying hydrated all day? Are you prioritizing quality sleep? Those things are in your control and very much affect your physiological state. Therefore, set you up either in a positive or negative way of feeling depleted or inspired by life by your core choices of your daily habits.
That's great. Okay, so salon owners, about boosting morale for themselves and employees. What works? What are some things that you see, or what are some of the things that motivate? You know, we often think about money, but it's not always that. So is it flexible hours? Is it more money? Is it paid time off? What is it that is motivating and boosting the morale of a salon team?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to let Jen talk to this because I know this is your thing, but what we see a lot, especially with this new generation, is yes, the flexibility is important, but they want to stand for a greater cause. They want to impact the world in a way that they couldn't do by themselves, but you are empowering them to make a difference in this world, whether it's sustainability, charitable organizations. They want to do feel good things with their community, with their people. And that's really where they thrive. They're more likely to take a culture that feels like family and, charitable initiatives or some kind of give back initiative over looking at the dollars at this point.
Yeah, I think another big thing too, before Jen gets into it, is they want a growth path.
They want a clear growth path.
A lot of these students that are coming out of school have gone through the last 5 years with a lot of uncertainty. They want security, stability, and be able to grow within any organization. That's a big one.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, laying out a succession plan for an employee is one of the most important things you can do, because rather than, they know what they can do and what they can achieve, they're going to hopefully do it within your organization rather than look for the promotion somewhere else or a higher or better title somewhere else.
Yep.
Okay, so I got one more question for you, and then we'll turn it over and we'll do a Q&A with everybody. So at the end of the day, stylists are behind the chair because they're passionate about the craft and they love being able to connect with their clients. How can stylists prepare with their clients before the appointments to ensure a positive color experience or just a positive experience all around with both the customer and themselves as a hairdresser, as a stylist? So what are some things that they can do? And you did mention about diet, which I think is a super important one, and people understanding nutrition and how what they're eating impacts their mood and their just daily, their energy. What else can you recommend that is going to prepare them for a great day with their clients? So, communication early with the clients, just give me some ideas and some examples.
So Matt and Jen probably have a ton of examples in this, but one of the things that I think is really important is asking for expectations in advance. The younger generation obviously texts everything. So say, hey, do you have any pictures you want to show me in advance? Yeah. What are you looking for this time around? Because context is so much in creating stability and communication. So any way in any aspects of your life that you can have context in advance, everyone's more prepared. So if you say that to your customer and they're sending pictures, you've already mentally thought through what kind of color am I going to need? How long is it really going to take? And have clarity in the expectations. So you as a stylist feel more in control, and the client's going to feel that you feel more in control.
Yeah.
This is true for leaders for meetings too. And this is where I see the ball drop constantly. When you're having meetings, and going back to the last question around morale, we're having meetings with your team. Always have intentions of those meetings, what you want to accomplish, what are the objectives, and clarify in advance the objectives. Or if you're having a one-on-one with somebody, ask them questions in advance. I'm going to have a one-on-one with you to see how I can help you. Have a questionnaire ready that you give to different people in your staff of, how can I support you better? Where do you feel your strengths are? Where do you feel you want to grow the most? How do I help you grow the most in this place? So when the meeting actually happens, both people have the mindset of an accomplishment, some strategies, some clear objectives. So the time together is more valuable and a greater experience than, so how are you doing? Because when you ask somebody that, they're flying through their day, chair to chair to chair, customer to customer, and you go, so how do I support you? It takes some time to really evaluate that question within somebody. That if you're ever having these more rich, deep type of conversations, if you can ask the questions in advance before the meeting happens, you're going to give somebody ample opportunity to really think through their answers in an intentional way versus just flying by the seat of their pants.
That's a great answer. Anything you want to add to that?
I think definitely it's all about the communication, the setting intention, and setting the expectation level, and everybody being clear on that. And Jen talks to this a lot, even when you're having that conversation with somebody, having them repeat back, like, okay, what is it that you feel we just agreed upon, or what is it that you just feel we discussed, to make sure that you're communicating in the most efficient way, and they're actually, what you're saying is what they're getting, and so that it really just kind of all comes down to that communication.
Yeah, I mean, that consultation. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, having that transparency before allows you to think through all the different scenarios. Jen talked about this last week at Data Driven, having those scenarios and being able to play through your mind so you're answering the questions in a way that's best for you, and having that transparency. Because I can imagine, like, I'm a yes guy, right? I say yes, even when I know that's not the right answer. And that's something that I'm working on. But like, as a colorist, can you imagine having somebody come in with this like crazy correction, and then their expectations are so far gone, and you're like, yeah, I could do that, because you don't want to say no, which I'm sure happens a lot. And again, it's just setting yourself for failure.
Absolutely. I mean, consultation is one of the most important things that we need to teach and keep going over. I met with the salon that I used to own. I sold it recently, and I went there to look at their consultation process. And it's common. There's not one in place. It's sort of leave it up to the individual. And if they didn't get good training in school, or maybe they have, they don't feel confident to ask these questions, that doesn't go well. And then the rest of the service doesn't go well. And that's why I think the retention rate with new clients in salons are so poor, because we don't start off on the right foot, asking the right questions and building that relationship the way that it should be built from the onset, from day one. Well, listen, I want to turn this around now and just see if there's anybody in the, who wants to ask any questions. So I'm going to turn this around. If anybody has anything you would like to ask, these conversations have been great today. I've been really enjoying this, so I'd like to keep this going. I'll just turn it around now and see if we have anything.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. And don't be shy, everyone. Is there anything you want to ask? Also, I've made to make sure that everybody knows how to get in touch with you. And I'm sure, a lot of salons are going to be reaching out after this. So we'll be sharing your details. But what is the best way to start this conversation? If there's somebody in the audience today that wants to take that next step and contact you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, we'll put Jen's email and our email in the chat. And obviously, our website is at CanvasMe, where they can learn more. But I think someone just popped. There we go.
Yeah. So the question that just came up is, how do you talk to somebody? How do you talk someone around if they're negative with their feedback? With feedback.
So sometimes at that moment, if someone's being negative, it's always helpful to take a deep breath and pause first. And then if your ego is getting triggered in this moment, think to yourself, how do I see this differently so that we both win here? So your ego is not your ally. Your ego actually works against you. But how do you get your ego to work for you in negative situations? It's really about, how do we both win here? So when someone's negative, take a deep breath, get emotional composure so you can be more logical, and say, I'm really sorry that you see it this way. How could I make it better? Or I'm really sorry that you feel that way. Maybe we can work through this in a different way. Or I'm sorry that you see that way. I'll work on improving it. If it's maybe a manager saying that you have to improve, just taking that feedback and saying, I appreciate the feedback. I'm sorry that you see it that way. I'll work on that. And so it's not, the name of the game in communication is about seeking to understand the other person versus needing to be right. When you need to be right, there's always going to be two egos coming at each other and nothing really accomplished in an effective way. So, and maybe in that moment, you think about what they said and it makes sense. And you could come back to them and say, hey, I had to think about that for a little while, but I appreciate the feedback and here's what I'm going to do to change it. Or maybe it doesn't make sense to you, but you don't need to be right in it. But if someone's negative around you all the time, I do things like this. Let's just say it's a coworker who's negative all the time. I say, hey, listen, I live in the drama-free zone. I like to live in a positive, productive language space. So or the complaint-free zone is another thing too. I don't mind if there's a problem, but let's focus on the solution, or let's use more positive, productive language around it so it creates a better experience. Don't be afraid to turn in a kind way. Don't be afraid to turn people around. Don't be afraid to say, I don't want drama in my space. This is your space. It's protected. And so keeping that drama out keeps drama seeking people. It gives them boundaries. And listen, Tim, I probably have a ton of friends that have drama in their lives, but they don't bring it to me because I made my boundaries pretty clear. And so it's a very effective way to really create an environment for your energy to stay in a positive and productive place.
Yeah, Jen, I think boundaries are so important because I agree with you. I too became that leader that lived in the drama-free zone, but with compassion, right? And I think we need to think about when we are giving somebody negative feedback, how is that delivery? So I think in a lot of times in my delivery, prior to this knowledge, I would almost be a little harsh, right? It's almost like, hey, you're not doing this right. You're not doing that right. This is bad. How are we going to turn around, right? Rather than coming from a place of compassion and empathy, almost like a parent would come and say, hey, you're doing amazing. How can I help you get to the next level? These are some of the things I can help you get to the next level, right? So rather than it being a negative conversation, it's like, hey, I want to see you thrive. I want to see you have the best opportunities in front of you. And these are some ways that I can help you do that. So I think it's really about the delivery of how we talk about those things, but also establishing that these are the boundaries. And if you're coming with me with something negative, most of the time it wasn't like, I hate this and I'm not that. And no, it was like, I'm having a problem that I hope you can help me with, because they knew that boundary with me was, don't come here to complain, come here and share what we can do together to make change. And that was just kind of how you build that culture of how can we have an amazing conversation together because we're part of the same team. How can we empower each other to be better? And again, there needs to be no ego, right, in that conversation.
It's about positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is such a powerful tool as a leader to uplift people. And so like Jen said, if you're constantly positively reinforcing somebody and you do need to give them feedback, I call it course correcting. So if you need someone to course correct, that's a totally different word, right? Like feedback, course correct. So feedback has a negative connotation to most people at this stage of life. So how do you help someone course correct to improve their course, to improve their path? And so addressing a situation, and maybe you need to course correct for somebody to say, hey, I want to help you course correct. Let's figure out a better way to do this versus you did this wrong. Totally different conversations.
Yeah. And a lot of times if you involve them in that feedback, like what's the solution together, they have more buy-in.
Yeah,
that's right. They have ownership on it. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I learned about myself as being a leader is anytime I have some negative feedback or I have some situation that I'm not positive about, maybe I'm really not happy with somebody on my team. I have the rule that I wait and I respond later. I never respond in the moment because I know myself that sometimes I'm not going to give the best answer, the best leadership, and then I need to step back and pause, really assess what I'm about to say or how I can correct or course correct the situation. I think this has been really interesting. This has been a great topic. We're doing webinars every month, so I encourage everybody to check in. But this one in particular, I mean, I think, we focus so much on the industry about technical skill and how to do this and how to grow, but we do not. And that, I think the stat is 1 out of every 7 people on a team have some mental illness or mental issues that they need to deal with and help with. So I think this topic needs constant attention, and we need to focus on this more in order for everybody just to have. I mean, for me, work was always a place that I would go to get away from my life's problems, right? That was my sanctuary, and I used to encourage my team to do the same. So I really, truly appreciate all 3 of you, what you're doing, and I wish you all the success. And I hope anybody who wants to get in touch, again, CanvasMe.com. Just continue this conversation and help your teams be better, be healthier all around. Anything you want to add in closing?
Yeah, so if they reach out to us, so they have an expectation, just put in the subject, impact training. And what we do as the next step is set up a consultation to figure out what their needs are, which leads then to the cultural assessment. And we give the feedback and we create the training specifically for their team or salon or salons. So that's how the process works for anyone that wants to reach out.
Again, thank you very much. It was lovely to
Thank you so
see
much
you
for
all.
having us.
Thank you for the great information. Take care,
Thanks
everyone.
everyone for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.